Thank you very much, Dr. Priyadarshini Madam. Once again, I welcome you all on 2 days International Symposium EWEW 2024. It's a great pleasure to introduce our next dynamic speaker, Honorable Dr. Smita Patil Madam. Presently, she is working as an associate professor at School of Gender and Development Studies, Indira Gandhi National Open University, New Delhi. She did her MPhil and PhD degree from prestigious Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. She is recipient of many prestigious fellowships such as Asia Leadership Fellowship Program Japan 2017, Research Excellence Program USC India PEIN Fellowship. She is also the recipient of Australia India Council Junior Fellowship at National Centre for Australian Studies of Monash University, Melbourne. She is awarded with doctoral fellowship of Center for the Study of Developing Societies and Indian Council of Social Science Research ICSSR Delhi and so on. Smita Madam has published many research articles in national and international repute journals such as John Wiley, Australian National University, Journals of Gender Studies, Griffith University e-Press, Australia. Her area of interest are women and gender studies, gender and law, political and social theory, caste and gender, and Indian politics and so on. So, I would like to invite our eminent speaker, Honorable Dr. Smita Patil Madam from India to deliver her address in this symposium.
चला सुरू करूया. Wishing you a very happy International Women's Day. Before I begin, let me thank to SSES Amravati Science College, Congress Nagar, Nagpur, Maharashtra. I would also like to thank the principal of the college, Shivaji Science College, Dr. M.Patil, the convener, Women's Grievance Redressal Cell, Professor Yogita Mishra, Department of Chemistry. Today I'm going to speak about this topic, women and empowerment. Before we get into this topic of women and empowerment, let me say a few words about why do we celebrate International Women's Day. As we see cutting across the globe, each one of us celebrating International Women's Day because the category of woman is historically subjugated in nature. What we demand is that, what we fought for throughout historically is that we as a woman are equal category. We do have the equal reason and rationality to think through, and therefore that demand is that to have the equal rights in every sphere of the life. So let me get into this debate of women and empowerment quickly. Now, when we say that women are empowered, what do you mean that? How do we categorize this concept of empowerment? Who is going to map this empowerment and who is going to map and define these categories and concept of empowerment for whom? As we see that patriarchal structure which is existing, cutting across the world, and even in South Asia and India, and per se in South Asia and India, we do experience the structural inequalities that are existing in the society. Now, women are not something of one category. There are differences in the postmodern sense, but there are also the categories, the ways in which it has been located based on social, political, economic, locations of them. So particularly when we engage with these categories of women, we also have in the world and in an Indian context, we need to sort of engage with the core debates of intersectionality as well. Now, for instance, what does it mean empowered? Does the woman only empower only through achieving something? Yes, to some extent, of course. Unless we women are independent category who can, financially or economically stable who earns, but who should able to also take decisions in everyday life in a patriarchal structures like institution like family, marriage. Women should able to say there should be equal say, equal contribution to every aspect of life. Then I would say that women are empowered. We have to also go back historically to understand this. Now, for instance, that if we look at historically 200 years before or say 150 years before, does women used to, go in every public sphere? No. To look at these debates, let me also frame out some of the Western theoretical model for you to make you understand. Now, one of the finest model which, in fact started with the rights of the woman, for instance, the voting rights, rights for education, and the pioneering contributor is the Mary Wollstonecraft, who wrote Vindication of Rights of Women, and in which what she argued, she draws the inspiration from liberals, the liberal theoreticians like James Mill and others. And what she says that she sees that women are rational categories. There's a reason, there's a thinking, right? They are not someone because they're born as a woman and therefore they have inferior brains and they cannot think through. So she said that unless women are educated, they cannot, sort of come to the public domain and raise the question. So the demand is that for the education and for the voting rights. Now, when we move on to the further other theoretical model, which is again a Marxist framework, in which that the Marxist, feminists argued that the category of women is, subjugated based on their class location, and there is a means and modes of protection in which that feminist has to engage, whose labor, whose wages, how they have been oppressed basis on that, right? There's of course a hierarchy which is existing, but we need to tease out and question that class location of this women in order to locate them, and then how it has been every day operational. One of the finest model which feminists have accepted, that is a socialist model, that is sort of a synthesis of the category of the Marxist and socialist categories, in which they are arguing that women have to assert, and in all these models also, that women have to assert and tease out the patriarchy, right? So unless we understand the patriarchal operation through different modes, one is not going to go and sort of engage with the further to transform the society. So the socialist model again is a blending model, and in which that many feminists, sort of also argued that unless we address the issues which are existing in the society linking with this, one cannot achieve certain things. Now, one of the another finest model, theoretical model, which is offered by the radical feminists. Now, radical feminists says that patriarchy is the key solution, which has a linkages with sexuality. So, all of these four models, in fact, point out that patriarchy has to be questioned, and I would, sort of engage with this debate that if you are a student interested to look into this debate very categorically, you can go and read this phenomenal classical works of Simon de Beauvoir's Second Sex, Theorizing Patriarchy by Sylvia Wolby, and many more others are there. Now, we have to, when we look at these debates of empowerment, we have to also understand that who is talking for whom, whose empowerment one is doing with, how do we measure, as I mentioned to you again, but again I'm emphasizing this, right? Another model which one would see that the debate of empowerment is a law. Now, law is category which is often been contested. We do have number of colonial laws. The feminist jurisprudence is one of the ways in which question, the legal status and how the laws emerge in Indian context. If you look at the Indian model and the legal system which we see even today, most of the laws, and therefore that the feminists have offered a critique to the gendered critique to the law by saying that laws are colonial construct, majority of them, and therefore we need to sort of engage with the laws time and again and do away with the traditional laws which was imposed by the colonial constructor, like the Britishers. No, but one has to also engage with the law from the point of view that does law brought any changes and empowered women? I argue that yes, it does. And for instance, if we look at the late 19th and early 20th century debates, you would categorically see that law is a fantastic tool used by majority of the women from the lower caste to dealing with the questions. For instance, Rakmabai Rao's case. Now, Rakmabai fought for the conjugal rights, right? It was a marriage, and her husband was a very elderly person, and she is the first one, the most assertive, radical woman at that time who raised this question. I have a choice to leave. If I don't like a person whom I married, because at that time it used to be all arranged marriage, even today it's happening in India. So she said, no, my willingness is not there to stay with the person. So she approached to the British court, and then she eventually engaged with that critical engagement was there, in which that if you look and read the judgment given by the British government at that point of time, it deals with the main number of questions which are even today relevant through this case. Ratnabai's in fact case informs us that look, marital rape is existing at that point of time, even today, and today even in India, we do are engaging with the marital rape laws, should be there or not. So those historical moments and case studies, in fact, informs us that we have to, engage constantly with the legal battle to achieve certain things, and we achieved, in fact. Secondly, is that, for instance, that at that point of time, again, sati marriages were there, right? The abolition of sati, child marriages, widow remarriages, these all debate were emerging, and today, even in today's context, these debates are still very relevant. During the pandemic, it has been noticed that particularly, India, the numbers of the child marriage in India increased. You see, we have laws, right? Still, why is it that then increasing? Because, pandemic has brought a number of, problems in the lives of people, and especially with the people who are poor and vulnerable. And therefore, you see that even in Maharashtra also, a huge number, the number has gone up. Maharashtra is one of the state which is having the highest child marriages. So you see that late 19 and early 20 debate, those debate which emerge about those child marriage, widow remarriage, even today we are grappling with those debates in the contemporary context. So what law has brought a solution and empowered in certain ways, but there's also been a complexity which we need to understand. The third parameter to understand the empowerment is the political empowerment, because there are multiple ways in which we can read the category of empowerment. For instance, social, political, economic, and one would see that women achieved in every aspect of life, particularly you see that it's a science and technology. They will be the best doctors, engineer, IT sectors. So every sphere that the numbers are increasing. But the whole question is that, are women treated with the dignity and respect within the family, within the private sphere and the public sphere? And this whole ideology of the patriarchy, which is there, how one is going to go and engage with that. Now, one of the ways in which one would see the empowerment is the political empowerment, where you would see that women are representatives, they are in the parliament, and I would just quote a data, the first election which occurred in 1962, in which we see that there is a minimal representation of the woman, and in 2014 you will see that the percentage was 14%. Now, as you see that because of the reservation policy for the woman, the numbers have been increased. If more women are going to the parliament, there is a possibility that women, can have the voice and they can raise multiple questions related with women and gender issues. The another important significant contribution to understand the political representation is 73rd and 74th Amendment Act, which we call it under the Panchayats Act. Large number of women are engaged, at the panchayat levels to be a sarpanch. Now, there are back and forth argument. Are these women proxy? But those arguments which people forwarded, that it's their husband or family member who is a male member, sort of, taking the power of this woman and using that power. And, those women are someone who are the proxy. But that argument is again contested, because we do have the evidences that women are more efficient servants. When we go and see, in the rural India, we do witness that there's of course a violence on those women also, because due to the patriarchal structure, because patriarchy is such a deeply rooted. At the same time, women are equally asserting, and there are multiple examples and successful stories of the women in the panchayats who successfully build roads, water issues, sorting out many more issues related with the everyday life of the woman. We struggle a lot to get the Women's Reservation Bill passed, and most recently we have seen that it has been passed. But we also have to engage with this. Thus, getting the Women's Reservation Bill is going to sort out the problems of the woman or not. Women's participation, even though we see that past 10 years data shows to us, and especially if we look at the work of the Sanjay Singh, then Mukulika Banerjee, then Sheila Roy, one would see that the women representative in the parliaments are increasing, the large number slowly. And of course, it depends on the political parties, and therefore that, this is a long debate which, like, the feminist, uh, sort of fighting for that there should be 50-50% reservation, but then it's the political parties who has to decide. Slowly you would see that even though at one level they are engaging with the equality issues, the justice, equality, fraternity, these are the issues the political parties are, sort of engaging with. But at the same time, you would also see that there are forcefully the masculine and, patriarchal power which are operating within those forces are also actively engaging and involving it. So therefore, we need to sort of engage and understand this concept of women and empowerment from several aspects of one's individual life and the collectively. There are a number of issues raised by the woman in post-independence time. Particularly 70s onwards is a period where you would see, as Gail argued, that new social movements emerge in India. So on one hand, you would see that the question of wages, which, right, the question of political participation, the issues related of the marginal categories like LGBTQ, Dalit tribals. Now you also see the ways in which that the demand for the reservation which is coming up, which one has to welcome, one should not deny, because one has to see that all kinds of, a possibility can be explored to empower all kinds of women in the country, and there should be a holistic approach to that, right? So one has to engage what is going around by bringing up this idea that how feminist movement or how individual even the writings as an academician, or kind of contribution each individual or collectives or the groups are doing, are sort of going to lead to emancipatory politics which would empower the woman and which can sort of create a history for the next generation. So it's like passing on the legacy in a positive manner to the next generation. And I think that the crucial issue which we have to question today, which I want to conclude with that for the young generation to think through, because as we see that the mass privatization of the education which is happening across the globe, the ways in which the violence going on, cutting across the world, the way how feminists or how individuals are going to go and engage with the new capitalist forces, because on one hand you see that there's a huge privatization, huge large number of women are also engaging in unorganized sector, and there is a question that what social security, because the state has done away with the social security in the new capitalist forces because of that. So one has to, sort of engage with these kind of question and to think that how the future generation, there are the possibilities to collectively to work together, to struggle together for the upliftment of each society and the community in India and across the globe. So I would again once again say thank you to Shivaji Science College and especially to Professor Yogita Mishra for expressing my ideas on the eve of International Women's Day. So once again, I would say Happy International Women's Day.